But I do think that consciousness involves an embodiment in the world, right? And so where do we go from there? How far? How is that embodiment? How does that work? What does that really require? So I mentioned in the third paper in the appendice, I deal with an explanation and a hypothetical explanation of how you might imagine that mentality had evolved out of a fundamental organisms, right? And how it came about, how it emerges. And that actually can explain how we could sort of boot up from something fundamental. I mentioned mentality. The mark, the intentionality is the mark of the mental, according to one of the philosophers. And so, is there intentional behavior? Digestion, human stomach digestion is just a chemical process that doesn't have any intentionality. That does not have any mentality. But the C. elegans, the little transparent nematode, it swims around, looks for something to eat. It eats E. coli. If there are not any E. coli in its area, it tries to move and go someplace else. It will actually hitch a ride on some other organism, a bacteria. And when the bacteria takes it to some place where there are E. coli, it hops off actually, and then it eats there. So is that showing intentionality? Well, yeah, I would argue that it shows a very, very primitive intentionality. So now we have the beginnings of something that seems to be mental because it has intentionality. And then how does that simple thing boot up into, more and more complex mentality, and then ultimately sentience, that is the ability to feel something, right? There's nociception, which is just avoiding pain. Okay, sea sponges have that; they will move away from pain, but
they'll dodge pain. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's not mentality at all, and it's also not sentient. Okay, you got to go up a level above the sea sponge to actually get to, I feel pain and I'm going to go away from it. So that's another level. Okay, so now you start moving up, and you can imagine how these organisms evolve, and mentality adds a competitive advantage, and so then they evolve more and more complex mentality, and at some point we get to consciousness. Does that start with your dog? Yeah. Could be some kind of primitive consciousness, maybe.